Welcome to Marathon Champions, the podcast where running legends Benji Durden, Bill Rogers, and Ron Tabb share their timeless wisdom on marathon training and inspire listeners with their wealth of experience. These champions continue to impact the running world today.
I have a question for both you guys, Nancy, Benji. Did either of you guys lose all of your toenails all at the same time while you were training?
I never lost a single toenail.
And I've got one right now that's going to go away. I've probably lost every one. I think I've never had more than two at a time. And it's mostly because I try to keep my shoes the right length, but you can just, you run enough miles and enough marathons and you can occasionally do that. But you say you've done it everything?
I've lost all mine. Yeah. I can't believe you've never lost a toenail. I ran quite often with no toenails at all. I think Joni, I think she had hers surgically removed, if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe. I know people have done that. I don't know anything about that story.
But mine grow back.
Mine grow back too, but I've never had them. But the bad water, where they run from So I'm recovering from surgery for my prostate surgery back in 2003. And John Sinclair brings me the video of that, thinking that somehow this will inspire me. And it's sort of like, oh my God. This is crazy. Why'd you bring this to me? This is keep me from wanting to run.
I'm surprised that John would do something that crazy.
John's done a lot of crazy stuff. He used to do barrel racing.
Well, I wanted to do so I grew up riding horses, and I only did one ride and tie, and I would have loved when I was really fit to have done a ride and tie.
The barrel racing is kind of crazy because you get a burro and it pulls you along, so you go faster than you normally would.
Well, they do that they have that sport, cane cross with dogs, that the dog pulls.
And I've seen that. When we were timing races, we'd occasionally have somebody come out and have a dog, and they'd run together. And the guy that would, I knew the guy that had a dog a lot of times, and he'd always run like a minute or so faster than he would run normally. So
that was probably the craziest thing. When I've watched now the UTMB, because I ran part of the course, I still am just stunned that they can run it that fast. It is technically so much more difficult than any trail I've ever run in the United States. It's, you're bouldering for part of that.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're bouldering in the middle of the night as fast as they're running, it's crazy.
There's places where you don't even know where your feet are going to go.
Yeah. Exactly. It's really impressive.
Not as crazy as the Barkley, but still.
What, Ron?
I was asking, what is the record for that Western State? Isn't it 17 hours?
Oh yeah,
16 hours.
It's crazy how fast they run.
Yeah.
But Western States, the trail is a trail. It's a real trail. The UTMB, it's just, there were parts there where there's no way. Even when I was young, I would have been running fast on, because it just was technically so difficult, but fun.
Let's see what the best time is here. Yeah, it's sort of completely out of our, even though you did the 40 miles, this is completely out of our range of experience. This is, road racing and the trail racing are, there is some crossover, but I've had friends that were really good road racers that went and tried to do this kind of stuff, and they were good for like 70 miles and they just completely fell apart.
Yeah.
Different.
I think you have to do it a few times. I think it's not, it's like those road racers that think they can just go out and run a marathon, and their first one they blow up, and then they have to learn how to do it. I think the big thing with those really long races is the fueling and keeping the food in. Yeah. Ron, what do you do for fitness now?
Walk and jog. When I'm jogging, I have to do it on the treadmill just because I have too many injury issues. I have the meniscus, I have the ankle. I get out and I do a lot of walking or cycling.
Yeah.
So
Rod Dixon bikes.
I do biking. There's so many of of our former runners that they've had hip replacement. I was talking to my old college coach yesterday, talking about some of the guys that we trained with and ran with, and they've had hip replacements, knee replacements. I haven't had a surgery since the 80s, and I'm trying to keep it that way. I don't know how Benji and Amy do it.
92 miles. And before I go on,
92 miles.
Through the results here from Western States, and they've run under 15 hours.
And last year, didn't Dahlwetter, whatever her name is, she was like 6th overall.
Yeah, I mean she's incredible. You know, it's just you don't I don't it's I can't my brain doesn't go there.
Well, I think, and she coaches herself. She just runs the way she feels, and
Yeah.
she's just a gift from God
Yeah.
to
And
have that.
I don't really know how you coach for that because there's so many variables. You just have to have somebody that's fit and able
Yeah.
to trail run because there's
And mentally as tough as nails. I don't think I was ever that mentally tough. I look at, that just looks hard.
yeah. Well, but then you look at like the Barkley,
Yeah.
and that's even another level of insanity.
Well, there's a gal running with West Valley right now who could qualify for the trials. She's really quite good. She only wants to do the ultras, and she's doing great. And
Well, whatever makes you happy.
Yeah.
I mean, we
Yeah.
we could have run faster time on the track than we did, Ron and I, but didn't really. I mean, he ran faster than I did on the track, but it just wasn't that much fun. And
that's what it's all about.
that's
Better
what it's
be
all
fun.
about. But back on Amy and I staying, I'm running 16-minute pace now as my easy pace, and 11-minute pace is my race pace. And I never could imagine running that slow when I was, back in the 70s. That's not running.
Oh, see, I had a different attitude, and it was proven true when I ran Boston with Emily, our daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I always said the people running at the slow pace at the back of the pack, the citizen runner, are in many ways mentally the better athlete because they are running at close to the same percent of their capacity for twice as long. And so
I kind of can accept that, but it still feels when I'm running hard that I'm running hard. I'm not, a 5K now is like running a 10K.
Well, that's my point. If you're slower, you're running a hard effort for longer.
Yeah.
I used to say it was harder to run a 3-hour marathon than a 2-hour marathon. Now, just because you're out there longer, I always felt like being out there for 3 hours was much harder.
Well, there's a little. I will give you. There's a little more difficulty mentally because you got to think about it a lot longer, as well as you've got to be prepared to get in. I never took anything nutritionally other than water in a marathon, but if you're going to be out there for 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever, you got to have some calories because the body doesn't have a clue about how far you're running. It knows how long you're running.
Well, so that brings up something interesting. I find all of this hydration and fueling stuff fascinating. So when I went to the Alps the first time, there were two gals from Central Valley, Fresno, two fabulous running buddies, and one of them had terrible trouble being nauseous, having trouble with her fluids, and this. So when I went, I didn't say anything about myself. You introduce yourself. I said, oh, I didn't say anything. And my husband, the first night goes, well, aren't they excited to be with you? And I said, well, they don't know. And so I waited a couple of days, and then I thought, well, maybe I could give them a little knowledge if I told them who I was, because they're not going to listen to the old slow lady, but if I had some cred, maybe they would. So I'm out running with the second slowest person, and he and I are running together, and he was asking me about everything, and he was so cool. It's a really cool guy. He'd moved to Bend, Oregon. He was widowed and went to Bend for a weekend. He'd from Florida, had never been in the mountain. He just took one look around and said, this is where I want to be. I want to trail run. And he just picked up his life and moved. He was a really great guy. And I said, oh yeah, so I used to run. Somehow I slipped it into the conversation. It's an awkward thing to slip into the conversation. So he was all excited, and he said, do you mind if I tell the other people? And I said, okay, I don't know how I'm going to tell them, so you go ahead. Anyway, this one gal who had all this hydration and fueling problem. I said, so what do you do? And she was taking those goo gels, which I tried once, and couldn't. Yeah. And plus, they're so sticky, and you have to drink so much fluid to get them down. So I had evolved to taking these little, I eat the little gummy type things that I actually like. That's what I would do. Scratch. I like the little scratch ones, the orange scratch. Anyway, and and you don't have to take a ton of water with them. You can, and I said, so she was taking one of those goos starting at the start of the race and then literally every 45 minutes. And I said, I ran an entire marathon without ever taking a single thing of food. And we just took whatever would stay in our stomachs from an electrolyte point of view. She said, really? And I said, yeah, would you do me a favor on tomorrow's long run? Will you just try, here are these scratch, just take one or two every once in a while and just here's some electrolytes that I like, just try these. And so at the end of this week, we had a race and she ran I ran the 23K. She ran the, whatever it was, like the 42K. But it was, mountainy. It was like a 5 or 6 hour endeavor. And she finished and she goes, I can't thank you enough. I've never once finished a long run without a problem. I just think these people are overfueling and it takes 2 grams of fluid to absorb a gram of carbohydrate. So you would have to drink a whole lot of fluid to absorb all of that. And then you'd be sloshing around. And I just think I think they overthink these things.
Well, there's a lot of marketing and so goo is marketed that you need to take so many goos during a race, but it's sticky, it's messy, and when I take something non-fluid, it is like the scratch or jelly beans. Jelly beans are pretty good too.
Yeah.
But typically, if I'm doing something anymore, I'll get defizz Coke or defizz Mountain Dew, and I wear a vest and I've got a water bottle in it. I wear the vest all the time now with the water bottle for all of my workouts because it's, if I'm every 10, 15 minutes, I take a little.
I was doing, so you talk about the 83 New York City Marathon, and I had Pepsi at the 18-mile mark. It's just to give me, and it's going to be fizz because they take the bottles the night before. But I would take soda.
The other thing is it takes energy to move carbohydrate across the stomach line.
Yeah.
And the more complex the carbohydrate, the harder it is to get across. Now, companies like Motrin, I guess they figured it out. I mean, everybody swears, I've never done it, but they swear that their carbohydrate is absorbed a lot better. And so a lot of the good athletes now are taking fluid carbohydrate as opposed to more solid or.
Yeah. So I take I have a thing called Drip Drop, which I don't think it's marketed to athletes, but we have a friend who has Parkinson's and they don't. Parkinson's, one of the symptoms is you don't control your heat well. And so his doctor prescribed this Drip Drop stuff, and it has a lot of carbohydrate. And so if I just drink the Drip Drop, and so you're getting it in your fluid without ever having to, but the thing about the goo was I couldn't eat a whole goo, and then you kind of roll it up.
What do you do with it?
It's like, and you don't want to throw it on the trail, and so you got this sticky thing in your pocket. But I still do most of my running with no water. My trails up here, we have some water fountain.
Water stops.
I'm in that whole naked running thing. I just like to be free, and that's the other thing with runners. They're so addicted to. Bill Clark and I talk about it all the time. They're so addicted to the watch. And
I'm addicted to the watch in the sense that, I want to know how far I went, but I don't care how fast.
I love that. I run with one of my guys who's a little bit older than I am that I run with. He's got a Garmin. I just use an Apple Watch because I don't want to have a second watch. I just like my little, I
have a Garmin, that's my only watch.
It doesn't, I keep saying it doesn't matter. It's accurate enough.
Yeah.
It's like your heart rate monitor. He'll wear a second heart rate monitor. I go, the thing on your wrist is accurate enough. You don't need, and
is he a cardiologist? Does he know what the heart rate monitor is really telling you?
No, he'll tell us. He's very funny. He's a physicist, so and he's wonderful. But he'll go, that track has a 1% grade uphill on one side. And it's like, okay.
No. Did he survey it?
His Garmin told. His Garmin told. But it's a little bit like I play golf.
Here he is as a physicist. Next time you talk to him, ask him if he understands the statistical variation of the GPS. The fact,
I'm sure he does. I'm sure he does. He's a really, really smart guy.
Yeah, but the altitude measurement, you take a Garmin. And you set it down on a table.
Yeah.
And you put it where it's telling you what the elevation is. And you watch, and it's going up and down and up and down and up and down.
Because
it's not moving.
Because the GPS is the
That's the
satellite's
satellite.
moving. Yeah.
Well, the satellite is not moving. The satellite's stationary, but the signal is getting interference, solar waves, radio waves, and so there's all kinds of variables, and it gets better all the time. Every year they get a little better, but measuring altitude is very marginal. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I always do with Strava. I always do correct the distance because all my running's on trails. So I go back in and I always get so I correct the distance every time because it'll add,
But you know the distance. The reason I keep track of mileage is we do these crazy virtual things.
Yes.
So we have to report them. And we're right now we did a transcontinental run last year. And we finished it. But most people just did a portion of it, and they're doing another portion this year. So we're doing the second portion again this year.
Yeah.
And hopefully in a week or two, we'll be done with it. And then we don't have another virtual run like that for a while. But, Amy and I try to have the same amount of running every day.
Yeah.
Running, walking, movement.
Yeah.
And so I have to watch my watch to make sure I finish what she finished. I usually go out about a half hour to an hour after she does, and she tells me what she got, and that's what I get.
Yeah.
We're crazy.
Yeah. Well, no, I play golf, and people, they have the range finders, and I don't use one of those. I have a watch that tells me the front, the middle, and the back of the green. And somebody said, well, is it 2 yards difference? Is the pin 2? And it's like, are you that accurate? Front, middle, back's fine for me.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be pretty good to be able to make the difference important.
Exactly. And I'm not that good. And I feel that way about the running watch. It's like, and Bill Clark and I talk about it all the time because we used to figure in the old days, I figured I averaged 7-minute miles. A lot of them were at 6, but I'm running on the trails and I'm running uphill. So I figured 7-minute miles, and Bill used to figure 6-minute miles, and that's how you figured your mileage for the week.
Yeah, and a lot of it was also wrong. I mean,
but it didn't matter because
it didn't matter. Your body doesn't know how far you ran; it knows how long you ran.
Yeah, and what matters also is relative, right? If you're running more than you did last week, or you're running that route faster than you did last week, and
even that doesn't really matter. It matters your intensity, it matters the duration, and it matters the difficulty. I mean, all of those are variables.
Yeah, and really, all it matters is what matters to you.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I mean, I was looking at my old training logs, thinking about talking to you guys today, and it's funny to look at them. It's funny and fun. Actually, to look at the old training logs.
I wish I had more training logs. I wasn't real good about keeping.
Posted a training log yesterday, and I read through it, and I was a little bit surprised at what I read. I'm not sure. Talking about accuracy of the distance of the times, because we didn't have the Garmin's back then.
No.
We basically, as Nancy, as you're saying, we ran basically by time. And pretty much, okay, if we went out for an hour run, we're assuming that we're probably around 10 miles for that hour run.
Yeah,
give or take a half a mile, or even maybe probably not a mile, but probably within a half mile, give or take.
Yeah, and that possibly is why I wasn't really that serious about keeping logs, because I talk about that 3-minute loop in the woods. I don't know how far I ran. I ran 2.5 hours to 3 hours. I don't know how far.
Yeah, I liked keeping training logs because those were, and I'm trying to translate this now that I play golf. I liked keeping them because I would look at them before big race, and I would feel like I'd done the work, and it was helpful to realize that I had done the work.
Yeah, I knew I'd done the work because I'd run a bunch of races, and I knew what the races had told me. I was not, at times it looked like I was very intellectual about my training, and I suppose I was, but for the most part, I was doing what I liked to do. And I'd had routines that I followed because they worked. And, it just was what I liked this was my life. And that's why I guess I'm still doing it.
Somebody asked me about my training last week sometime. And I said, well, here's the thing. I remember what my typical week when I was in high mileage was Friday was the rest day. And what that meant was I only ran 9 miles on Friday. And that felt like like I'd gone to Tahiti on vacation.
Did you do doubles?
I did doubles. Yeah.
Did you do doubles?
Yeah, I did 10 in the morning, 5 in the afternoon for the most part.
Okay.
then a long run on Sundays. And
What was your long run? What was your long run? What did that look like?
I think it was between 17 and 20. It's a loop, and actually, the girlfriend I went to the Alps with, we do it once a year, just for fun. We actually take 2 miles off it because there's a road section of it. And we just put cars at both ends because we don't want to run on the road. But it goes, run along a road for a couple miles, and you go up to the top of Skyline. And so it's maybe 3 miles uphill, and then it's a rolling trail, and then you come down in another park. And it's beautiful. And it's funny, I hadn't done it in 20 something years. And it was like, it all came back like this happy memory. So we try and do it once a year, just as a little happy memory. It takes a lot longer now, but it's a happy memory. And then when I got deep into marathon training, I would do a couple where I'd do 23 miles. But I wouldn't do that very often. And then at the end of that, I had measured by a course measurer. He measured a mile for me at the end, so I could figure out really how fast I was running on the road at the end. But it's shady, it's beautiful, it's a lot of roll, it's uphill, but it's an old logging road, so it's like 3% grade going up, so it's nice. How about you? What was your long run, Ron?
I typically kept my long run on Sunday. I do a 17 really hard pace in the morning. And when I say hard pace, a lot of times middle miles were sub 5s.
Wow.
And then I do a shakeout run in the afternoon of 5 miles. So I'd end up with 22, 23 for the day. I always felt like anything over 20 or anything over 18 miles, you started breaking down. And I knew on Tuesday I was going to be doing a couple of track workouts. This is when I began training with Dillinger. And so I didn't want to be beat up.
Want to be flat.
I couldn't do anything on Tuesday.
And I did my long runs on Thursday. And I would do 2.5 to 2:45, and it would be anywhere from 18 to 23, depending on the course and the weather conditions. And, I was doing this in my double to triple sweats. And then I'd come back and do anywhere from 6 to 10 miles in the afternoon. And that was my long day. But then I would run a non-serious race Saturday or Sunday. And, it would be a race, and I'd run as hard as I could, but it wasn't a race that I was taking, care of. I ran 30 minutes for 10K. It was good enough.
Yeah. See, I did the real periodization for the with John Dixon. So
because he was coming from the Lydiard school.
Yeah. So we did, he would have these 16-week training blocks, and you just do distance, and then you'd get into faster stuff, and then you'd get into the faster stuff.
Yeah. Where I think, and Ron's probably this way too, we were racing almost year round. I'd have about 2 months, maybe 6 weeks of the year I didn't do much racing. That would be in July and August when it was just too hot in Atlanta to really think about racing much. And the rest of the year I was running races all the time. So that kind of periodization was difficult to achieve.
Yeah.
That was my job, was going to races.
Yeah.
And and it was fun. Looking back, maybe if I wanted to run faster, it would have been better not to go that route. I mean, I might have been a little bit better runner, closer to Dixon in performance, but I didn't start off in being a 1,500 meters like he did.
Yeah.
But I think we all found what worked for us, and that was why we were ultimately successful, because what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for the next person. I know that Benji and I, we talk quite often, and I'm not sure that what Benji was doing would have worked for me, and I'm not sure that
what you did I couldn't have done. I tried doing it, and I break down or get flat. It's I was at least 20 pounds heavier, probably more like 30. And part of that is height difference too.
Yeah, because I was 5'6", 116, so I was pretty small.
Yeah, so I was 30 pounds heavier.
And I outweighed you. I was the same height, and I outweighed you.
My nickname was Scrawny Ronnie.
After 88, I had a baby like 9 months after the Olympics. And then when I came back to running after that, I wasn't sure I was going to want to keep running, but I did. And then I had Brooks Johnson coach, and he knew.
I was wondering about Brooks, because he was at Stanford, but you didn't run at Stanford.
No, I didn't. But I didn't run at Stanford, but after 88, I needed, so Sissy Hop had at that point 2 kids, her younger one and my younger one are the same age, and my older one are the same age. So we would bring all the kids out to the track. I needed a group because I needed childcare among other things, and I just needed something different. So, but Brooks had no idea of how to coach the marathon, and
Right.
he was all about.
Yeah.
And
He told me I didn't do enough speed work.
Yeah, no, he told everybody that. So, so I told him, I said, I'll see you in 12 weeks or 8 weeks or something like that. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I'm going to go do what I need to do. And I just didn't want to tell him. I just didn't want to tell him, I'm going to run 100 miles a week for the next 8 weeks to get myself back to where I need to be. And I came back, and then I was always fast. After I came off of that, I was always fast. But I remember doing one workout with Patty Sue Plummer. And my favorite workout in the world on the track was 5 or 6 times 1,000 with a 200 jog. And I loved that workout. And, the jog was a walk, to be honest. It was a fast walk. Patty Sue, if she did that workout, and, was the American record holder, she would change shoe for that 200. She would take like 10 minutes to do that 200. And
That's
she literally would change shoes. So we couldn't do that. We tried doing that workout together once, and she could not stay with me.
So her recovery, she would switch into flats, into training flats.
Yeah, that's my memory. And she tried running on the trails with me a couple times, and she couldn't stay anywhere near me. I mean, and she's like a minute faster than I am at 5,000. But she was, and that's what worked for her would not work for me.
Yeah.
And what worked for me was, doing that 200-meter jog in between those thousands. And to this day, whenever Bill Clark gives us thousands, I go, oh yeah, we get to do thousands. Although I do 800s now.
Yeah. Did you ever drop down to 2s and 3s?
I ran a fast off marathon training in flats. I had, during that time when I was running with Brooks, I had 2 really good races on the track at the all-comers meet at Stanford. I mean, at Los Gatos High School. In those days, everybody that was training here for the Olympics and everything, you should see that I should send you guys the meet records. It's a who's who of who was good runners in those days. And two races I remember vividly. One was a 5,000, and I think I still have the meet record, where I had no idea. I'd never run I don't think I'd run a track, and I just went out and I ran like 16:08 or something like that. Just
Yep, 16:08 your PR.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. And then I jumped into an 800 with Sis, and not the same day. And I went. And I have no leg speed, right? And I've never owned a pair of spikes. Spikes have never been on my feet. So I don't know what I was thinking, but I went through, my mile PR is, I think, 4:44. But I went through the 800 right behind Sissy, and I went through the 804. And then I kind of hung on, and I forget what I ran, but it was under 2:15. I mean, it was fast. And I remember thinking, oh, that's what that's supposed to feel like. And I don't want to feel like that ever again. But I went through, and Brooks was, on the finish line. As I went through the quarter, he says, he says something to Sissy, and then he says, go, Nance. And Sissy turns around like, what's she doing there? I recently have run shorter stuff because West Valley has age group records. So I decided it'd be a good idea to set age group records so that the young people would have, as they aged in, they'd have something to break. So, but I love Bill Clark. It was before I turned 70. It was probably pre-COVID. So, I was in the 65, 69 age group, and I decided to run a half mile. And I got to the all-comers meet, and they actually moved the time up, and I hadn't realized they were starting a half an hour early, and they'd already run the 800. So I saw Dina Evans, Dina. And so I saw Dina, and I said, hey, I'm all set to run an 800. Do you have a couple runners that would run with me so I can run the 800 because I missed it. And she said, sure. So Dina ran and somebody else ran and I ran. And I remember it was
break 240.
And
Did you break 240?
Oh, no. I wanted to, no, God, no. I was hoping to break 330, right? And I ended up running, I ran, okay, the first quarter and then, I sagged in the third 200, but then I rallied, finished strong, and I actually ran faster. I think I ran like 212 or 210 something. I mean 312.
I say 212. That's really that's pretty good for your age.
And I was really proud of myself because I kind of in the back of my mind I thought I wonder if I can break. I go up in this, I cool down. I go up in the stands afterwards, and I'm expecting the pat on the back in true coach fashion. Bill looks at me and goes, "What happened in that third 200?"
What a good coach is going to say.
No, it was so good. It was so good. Yeah. I just love that because he's training everybody he trains to be their best. He doesn't, care.
He recognized that you'd slow down.
Yeah.
Nancy, Benji, did either one of you guys use ERG?
Gluconate? Well, Bill Glucan gave me a whole bunch, and so I used it. Yeah. I didn't like it that much.
I tried it. Yeah. But Rod Dixon got to be really friendly with the strength and conditioning coach at the 49ers. And they had developed something that I thought was a bit of a secret weapon for me, for the football players. It was a carbohydrate loading drink. And I would take that the night before marathons, and it was like the equivalent of like 11 baked potatoes. It was an I tried the depletion loading thing once and I didn't like it. I didn't like the way it made me feel. I just tried to load, and I thought that stuff worked. And then they had some electrolyte thing that maybe I used whatever I used was like half strength. But a lot of my races, they didn't have, personal aid stations. So, and they can be problematic.
It was more common for us. And I actually had bicycle handlers at races early on. It was still allowed. The races were small enough. I had a personal, guy riding along. If I wanted a drink, I put up my hand and he'd give me a drink.
Well, so what happened to me in the Olympics in '88 was I came to the first aid stop and it was hot. It was hot and miserable. And I was not a great heat runner. I think partially because I was bigger, right? That you got little Rosa Moda. She's like half my size. Right. And less surface area. And I got to the first aid station and somebody knocked my water bottle off. And they didn't have water after. And it was on like a hill. And so I went running to grab it. It was rolling down the hill. I went running to grab it. A volunteer picked it up and started running it back the other direction. So I actually, so I had to make the decision: do you skip fluid at 5K, at the first 5K on a hot day, or do you go back and get it? So I ran back and got it, and then I lost the pack. And so I was sort of in no man's land for the entire race. It was not a happy place to be. And, if you're stuck in no man's land, it's not fun. But I will end with this story. I finished the race, and, the Koreans are not fans of the Japanese. That's an understatement. Mm-hmm. And I crossed the finish line, and behind me, a Japanese runner fell at the finish line, and nobody helped her. They just stood there. The volunteers just stood there. So I had thought at the time it was a Soviet runner, but it turns out it was a Canadian runner. And I went back and picked her up. And then all the cameras, that are in the bay, they're sunken down at the end of the finish to get you as you're coming into the finish. They're all yelling because we had gotten in the way of their photo of this fallen runner, which they thought was going to be their great run. And they're screaming at us to get out of the picture. And we're just trying to pick her up. And I remember thinking, well, this is the way sport is supposed to be, that people are supposed to pick one another up. And it was a sort of a nice moment. But then I went into the mixed zone, and the whole time I'm running this race, and I'm 35 years old. I've been putting off having a family. I'm having a bad race. And I remember thinking, well, it's good because I'm never, ever, ever going to do this again. I'm all done. I'm retired. I'm going to finish strong and just be done. And I get into the mixed zone, and the first question I get asked is, when's your next marathon? Because there was nothing else to say because I'd had a bad race, right? So it was great talking to you guys.
Yeah, it was great talking to you, and
Good talking.
Hopefully see you guys soon.
yep.